Hi, this is Tammy, and this week we're going to talk about 5 court mistakes that will hurt your child custody case. Now, I can tell you from working with hundreds of people that it's much easier for you to get these things right going in than it is to try to correct them after the fact. And if you are trying to correct them after the fact, hopefully you can use this the next time that you're in front of your judge. And if you haven't gone in front of your judge yet, then you're in the right place because this is going to give you a leg up going into it. Okay? How can you make sure that you are not making the judge angry when you go in to appear in your case? And how do you make sure that the judge listens to you and try to make sure that they understand what is going on in your case? And in child custody in particular, I think courts really want to get to the bottom of what's happening in the family so that they can make the judgment that's in the best interest of the children. The first and foremost, most important thing that you can do is for you to understand court procedures. And, this comes down to just maybe going and watching court, observing, and just exposing yourself, especially if you've never been around anything like this, so that you know, one, how to dress. Okay, you dress business. Attorneys wear suits, right? There's a reason. Why does an attorney wear a suit going into the courtroom? Because they want to show respect. They want to show deference to the judge. So you don't want to show up in an outfit that says, I don't really take this too seriously. If you're showing up in a t-shirt and shorts and flip-flops, you're probably not going to make a good first impression. And we always say you only get one chance, right, to make a good first impression. And so that's real important. You want to make sure your appearance is in line with a courtroom decorum. You also don't want to go the other direction, especially ladies. I've seen this a lot where you go in and you're, wearing something that's kind of more on the not that you shouldn't be attractive, but maybe more a provocative side, or you've got large heels, very high heels on and things like that. We're not going to a nightclub. We're not going in to try to seduce our judge, right? We want to appear very business, very serious, and let the court know that this is an important issue to us and that we take it seriously. The other thing that you have to understand is you do not want to speak at the same time as the other person. You don't want to talk over them. You want to wait your turn. And you need to understand that there's an order in how the court does things. Now, typically, whoever filed the motion that's in front of the court, they will get to go first. And so the second person, that's the responding person, will go second. And that can be a little frustrating, right? If you're the responding person and you're sitting here listening to the first person essentially attack you, right? That can be really frustrating. So what I tell people to do is, especially self-represented people, take a notepad in so that you can take notes and that you can write down anything that's said that you want to be able to respond to when it's your time to speak. The second thing that I think gets people in the most hot water is that the judge asks a question and they don't answer it. What happens is the judge asks you a question like, how many times has the other parent seen the child in the last 3 months? And you start giving the whole history. Well, it's changed a lot. And 3 months ago, we came one weekend, but then it didn't work. And the children had this thing going on and we had to change and I have seen the judge cut that person off and then ask the question again. And the person will go into the whole litany of the explanation again. And so it's very frustrating with the court because when they're asking you a question like this, they're looking for a very specific answer. How many times has the person seen the child in the last 3 months? The answer might be, I'm not sure. 4 to 6 times. I'm not sure of the exact number, or as close as you can get. But to try to have this conversation kind of out loud in your head of like, well, this happened and that happened. And, the courts are very limited on their time. They have usually on a regular motion, they'll have anywhere from 15 to 20 cases on a given morning that they have to get through all of those. They only have a maximum of usually 20 to 40 minutes per case. And if every case went 20 to 40 minutes, they wouldn't get through their whole calendar. So they're trying to push things along and get it resolved. And the more precise that you can be with your answers, the better off you're going to be and the less you're going to upset your judge. Because if they're looking for a specific piece of information and you keep giving them this whole background, they're going to get more and more frustrated with you. It's real important that if the judge is asking a question, try to think of that question and think of the very specific answer. How many times has the other parent seen the child in the last 3 months? Like I said, you might have a calendar in front of you and might be able to say, just a moment, Your Honor, I can calculate that. Boom, 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 12 times, or it might be, I'm not sure exactly, it's changed a lot, but I would estimate it to be 4 to 6 times. Or, Your Honor, I'm not really sure what it's been over the last 3 months. I can tell you in the last 1 month, the other parent has seen the child 3 times. Those types of answers that are very succinct and to the point of what the court is actually asking of you. You need to be brief. That is probably one of the other top mistakes that I see people make is they are not brief enough, because we tend to want to give our whole life story, our whole explanation, and the court doesn't have time for that. You might have 10 things that the other parent has done wrong in the last 6 weeks, but you're not going to be able to get all 10 of those things in. You're going to have to pick what are my top 2 or 3 things and be able to present that information. And a lot of times I see clients go in and they're not brief enough. They end up getting cut off, and then they didn't get in something that was really important, and they feel really, really frustrated because then the judge makes a decision and they go, but the judge didn't even know this thing. And it's like, well, if that was so important, that should have been one of your key 2 or 3 things that you were presenting, and you should have let all these other little things go. We tend to think that the more stuff we have to throw at it makes it more powerful, and that's actually not true. Actually, throwing more stuff at it dilutes the key 2, 3, 4 max points that you have. We're not looking at how many good points do I have. We're looking at what are my 3 or so very best, most impactful points that I have to make. Now, again, in the last episode, I talked about getting educated, and this is important in this regard because it's not the 3 things that you think are most important. A lot of times in child custody cases, what we feel like is important as a parent or what we see as important for the sake of our child isn't necessarily something that is going to influence the judge's decision. You have to remember that that judge is making their findings based on the law in your state, and that's what they're looking to. So you want your points to tie back to things that are in line with the child custody laws in your state. You don't get as much effect when you're just expecting the judge to look at what's reasonable or what you think is reasonable, because that's not the approach that they're coming at it with. Judges are lawyers, and they're coming at it with that legal analysis, and that's what they're looking for. What decision do I make according to the law in this state? What should my finding be? And so again, as lay people, we tend to think of reasonableness, but that is not the judge's criteria. And so you have to understand that when you're making your points, and make sure that you're trying to line up your points with what is going to be important in the judge's view based on how they make their decision. A lot of times the person wants, they will tell the judge they're wrong. Well, Your Honor, you're wrong. That's not how this should be, or that's not what, the decision you should make, or whatever. And they think that the court is wrong. And so they essentially tell them that. And I'll tell you one way that you can send that message to the judge without necessarily saying it out loud. And that is by filing multiple motions over and over and over around the same issues. Because you're essentially saying to the court, look, last time I was here, I don't think you got it right, so I'm going to file again. It's not going to solve the problem. What you have to do in the situation where you're not getting the outcome you want from the court, you have to figure out why. Why is the judge making this finding? Why are they giving this order? What is the court's concern? If you're not getting the parenting time you want, if you're not getting the outcomes that you want on your child custody case, it's probably because you are not addressing the court's concerns. When you just refuse, or you don't, address what their concern is, or you don't know what their concern is, then you're just kind of taking a stab at different random things, trying to figure out why you can't get the outcome you want. And you're feeling more and more frustrated as this process goes on. We have to understand that when we're in front of a judge, they're the decision maker. They're the trier of fact in your case. And so whether you agree with them or not is not always the question. It's not usually the question, because they're the one in control. And so whether you agree with them or not, you have to address the concerns the court has in order to start to shift things to go the direction that you want them to go. The last thing that I will tell you is the big mistake that I see people make is they don't follow the court's orders. So they come back in on another motion and they haven't even complied with the prior orders. One of the things I see happen a lot is somebody will have an order for a certain amount of parenting time. Let's say they have 20% parenting time. And then they'll go in and say, maybe they have every other weekend. And then they'll go in and say, well, I want every other weekend and a weekday overnight. But they haven't been even showing up for their every other weekend. They're showing up maybe one Saturday a month, or they cancel a lot, or they reschedule. And so the court's going to go, well, you're not even using the parenting time you have. Why would I order more parenting time for you? This takes a lot of really laying your pride down and understanding that the court's the one in control at this point. If you and the other parent can't agree, and this is why I always say, if you can reach agreement with the other parent, you're better off. But if you can't, you're putting the control of your parenting in the hands of that judge, who is doing their best to make the decisions that need to be made. But look, you're not always going to agree with them, because you're not the same person as them. You don't have the same value system. You don't have the same worldview. You don't have the same life experiences. And so, yeah, you're not going to see eye to eye on everything with your co-parent or the judge or anybody else in your situation. But you do have to understand and respect the fact that that judge is the one that is in control. And so the more of these mistakes that you make, and the more that you give the court the impression that you don't respect the process, you don't respect them, you don't respect their orders, you don't respect their questions, all of those things, then it's going to get worse and worse and worse for you. And the way to turn that tide, even if you've made those mistakes in the past, is to start to do those things, to show respect to the court, to keep your arguments brief and focused, to make sure that you're following all the previous court orders, to answer questions as succinctly as you can, and to not do things that tell them they're wrong, but instead take responsibility for whatever it is that they wanted you to do, instead of trying to undo it by telling them they were wrong. Okay? So this will give you a lot more success in court if you can learn to apply these things to your case. If you're watching me on YouTube, Please hit like on this video and also subscribe to our channel so you get notified when new episodes come out each week. Also, if you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to rate and review me, and also click subscribe so you get notified as I release new episodes each week. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.